Make sure you check out our online store where we work with our graphic designer to create stunning garment and product designs that feature a wide variety of aircraft types such as British fighters, World War II aircraft, American bombers, Russian fighters and much more. You can pick your favourite designs and personalise any items within our Redbubble store that range from clothing right the way through to stationery. All of our designs feature our logo so you can show your support for the channel while getting a quality product. You can head to our website aircrewinterview.tv and click store, or go to redbubble.com/people/AC interview. Thank you and enjoy. You also flew on Red Flag. What were your experiences there?
Yeah, the following year we went to Red Flag. It was all the premier air defence exercise that we participated in. Luckily, on the way, I got to chance to do some air-to-air refueling, which I hadn't been able to do in Australia since we didn't have any tankers. So, had a flight out of Hickman in Hawaii and met up with the tanker and learned that. That qualified me for the rest of my life. So, we then pressed on to Nellis, and yeah, I think we had one familial flight, maybe two in that first week, and then we had 2 weeks on the exercise. Pretty similar to Cope Thunder, except with the added advantage of having the ACMI pods, which recorded everything and enabled all that tracking that you've seen on TV and on the movies, for all the feedback and debriefing, which is great. Pretty intense exercise. Not as many aircraft as Cope Thunder, but it was more intense on the ground, and we got to drop high explosives as well. So not just practice bombs, it was a real thing there.
And was that standard for Red Flag to be able to drop live munitions?
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, okay.
So,
and obviously Red Flag, everyone knows Red Flag. Were the Tornado crews there from any other nations, and did you interact with them?
I don't think there were any Tornadoes on the one I was at. There was some German C-130 crews, and I think they were there were actually 2 exercises running. There was like a morning and an afternoon, and then they swapped in the second week. So there were 2 concurrent exercises. I do remember that the German C-130 crew flew through Dreamland, and we never saw them again.
Sounds about right.
Yes, I think.
Yeah. So, Mike, do you have any memorable stories from Red Flag from flying the F-111 over there?
Yeah, I had one good one. We were taxiing out to launch. I had 2 500-pounders to drop on that one in high explosives. So we're out, and we hadn't even got to the holding point, and the inertial nav unit just fell over, and we couldn't get it working again. So we just put it in attitude mode, I think, and gave us some. I can't even remember if that worked or not, but just for the attitude indicator. But it didn't work. Luckily, it had happened to me a couple of months before, and I knew what actually was going to happen, that all the degraded mode practice we'd done didn't account for that particular failure. But because it happened to me on the range at Evans Head, and I was dropping all these bombs 500 feet short, I actually went back and worked out what had gone wrong, and I had to add in some extra depression for the angle of attack that wasn't part of our standard degraded mode, mission continuance. But anyway, so sorted that out. Got through the air defences, through the ground defences, pulling 4G and left, right. We're doing a pairs in tactical pair, about 3,000 feet of beam just outside of the frag envelope of the 82s, and one at each end of the runway. And the only thing is I had to be actually on speed and on altitude and zero pitch rate, just because it was just an iron sight, I guess like a World War II type. There was no stabilisation, and we let it go, peeled off, fought our way back, and luckily that was, well, it was shown to me as being pretty much a direct hit as well. So that was good, and it was just showed that doing all the practice we do back home, when things go wrong, you do find out some of the, some things that there's always something outside of the standard that you're taught.
Mm-hmm.
And that had happened, and we were able to deal with it and actually achieve the mission.
And was the F-111 still a respectable aircraft at that time? Because I heard a story, interviewed a guy recently, and he was on the Tornado F3s, and in the briefs, the debriefs, so they didn't even acknowledge the F3. Were the F-111 still a notable threat, would you say?
Oh, look, they were, and certainly until I retired, I left the Air Force and the aircraft retired. I mean, they were doing the job. And if you wanted to actually get bombs on target, they were the aircraft to send. And part of that was having the two crew. That does make a difference to getting the bomb in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Things were always improving. Our tactics were improving over my time, to the point where we were pretty good at
mm-hmm.
defending against F-18, F-15 type threats, AMRAAM. We could handle things with within the limitations of our aircraft, and we employed those tactics pretty well. The PATAC was a great system. I mean, the Gulf War pretty much proved that. I think the F-111F's got about half the targets in the Gulf War, with 10% of the aircraft, or
mm-hmm.
Thereabouts. And that was that continued on, and the aircraft were improved, and we went through the avionics update program, which did help us out with quite a lot of systems performance and navigation. It was pretty accurate aircraft. And then after I left, that continued on. They were able to do software updates. We didn't have to do everything in our head. Back when I started, it was a lot of mental math, and you're just listening to the radio. There's nothing, it's all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And things did get better from
mm-hmm.
that point. But it probably did get limited by networking and things like that with later on in life.
And I have to ask, did you go to Vegas while you were at Red Flag?
Well, I guess so. We were there for 3 weeks. So. Yeah, we did a bit. We saw the sights of Vegas and things. So, one thing I probably regret at that age, you're pretty young, and you tend to just did everything in the squadron, and you didn't see much else. So it was Nellis and Vegas. That's about it. And then some of the other guys were a bit more adventurous and did some trips out to, when I say more adventurous, but they were probably a bit smarter and took a chance to see some other things.
Yeah, the sightseeing. But did you ever fly on live ops? I think you were part of the Gulf at some point, weren't you?
No, we did a lot of training. I was on when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and our Navy was pretty much committed in the first week or so, and they were arming and ahhing about us. But when the Navy went to Jarvis Bay and armed up for deployment to the Gulf, and I was on one of the first 2 aircraft to take off and start striking them and preparing them for their Gulf deployment. We ended up on the second night, we had another 2 jets join us. So there were 4 of us, and we went around Australia to Perth over about a week, just aircrew maintenance, did everything ourselves. I had a bit of the engine go down, or a seal go down the engine, had a compressor stall, which was quite exciting at 300 feet in the pitch black at night. I remember I was still 90 miles from the ship position and it felt like we'd hit something. It felt like we actually hit a mast or something out there. And it was just that instant loss of thrust. Pulled up, recovered, and the CO, who was a very can-do person, he got in the aircraft and worked out what it was that had gone. It was just a bit of a rub strip, they called it, and it separated and gone through the intake. And he did all the inspections and said, "Yep, we're good to go." And then we kept flying that, and I kept flying.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. Like, you did all that on maintenance on such little manpower, I guess. Like, the F-111's a complicated aircraft as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there's another time I went on a trip with with the nav, and we flew for 7 or 8 sorties over a week, just ourselves. The only thing that we couldn't fix was the videotape that failed, and luckily the Hornets were there, and they were able to. One of their avionics guys was able to fix our videotape machine because it was the same one. But yeah, that's pretty good. Over 20 hours flying, a lot of low level and support, and we just did it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no minimum equipment list. You can, if you're satisfied it's safe, you can continue.
And who has to sign off for that? So, I mean, is it you as the pilot or the navigator, whoever's command of the aircraft? It says like, okay, I think this is okay to go.
Yes, a lot of the time it was just, I think I can go with this or not. Look, as part of a squadron, you always try and get help from senior people. So, if you knew about it, you'd call up the boss and get some help if you could. If you're away and you made the decision that yes, I can live with that or live without it, then that was the captain's decision. You'd have to justify yourself at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't law. You must have this. There was a guide of things that. It was mainly a guide of things that could be replaced on the line, say with the engines running and things like that. But we couldn't do any of that if we were away. It was just, And there was a time when I came back from the States once, one of the fire systems wasn't working, so we ended up being grounded. So had to wait for a rescue.
And moving on, I think later in your career as well, you mentioned it before, you went on to the F-111 upgrade. Was it the AUP? And can you tell us about that, a bit more detail?
Yeah, well, it was the digital update that the RAAF did. It had been planned for quite a few years, and it came online just when I was when I'd come back from my instructing period on the PC9. I got back, flew the G models for a while, and those first few aircraft had just arrived, and the first conversion course had started with them. So I got back up to speed, got all my qualifications and instructor back, and then I joined up with that course that were about the start of their night phase. So my first real instructing job on the F-111 was straight in at the night part of the course, which was interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I was going to talk about night flying. Tell us about that, Mike, because I mean, night flying sounds horrendously difficult. How did you find it as an instructor as well and teaching other people?
Look, it's it just adds a complication to everything, and a lot of the terrain following was not necessarily difficult. We did it very procedurally to keep it safe. So we had all these gates that we wanted to pass through, and if we didn't meet that, we would do something about it to sort ourselves out. So the system was pretty reliable. I really didn't have too many problems with it. There were a couple of times, and to be honest, there wasn't much time to think about it. But if you weren't happy, get away from the ground and sort it out. And by then, you may not be able to replicate it, what had actually happened. And we weren't always recording everything. We didn't have the tape running all the time, so you couldn't always go back and discover exactly what had gone on. Yeah, the terrain following radar, it was basically just an the autopilot would fly at whatever altitude you'd set, and it could be 200, 300, 400 feet, 500 up to 1,000. You had soft, medium, and hard rides. We generally flew around at 400 feet medium for most of the training. Again, that would give us a little bit of time if something went wrong. The system wouldn't fail until you got to 68% of your set clearance. So if you're at 200 feet, you wouldn't get a fail until you went to 136 on the radar altimeter, and then it'd go fail and fly up. So that's not a lot of time, especially if you've got a bit of rated descent on the aircraft at the time. And we're talking about small degrees. When you're doing 500 knots, it's small pitch changes do make big differences to rates of climb and descent. It was just a lot of monitoring the aircraft, real instrument flying. I really learnt how to instrument fly on the F-111. I think we almost all graduate off pilot's course and intro fighter course, etc. As we push-pull a lot, and it was going back to the basics and setting attitudes and really, really doing that and become an accurate instrument pilot. And that I really learnt that on the F-111. Just setting an attitude and keeping things under control, because we did, steep descending turns down to 500 feet at night on the range as well, and that was all manual flights. We'd fly down at 300 feet with the radar off, and that's when I had that engine, or momentary engine failure anyway. It was, that was just on the instruments at 300 feet at 540 knots. Mm-hmm. Couldn't see anything outside.
Oh, God. And as an instructor, was it a rewarding job?
Yeah, it's pretty rewarding, but it's also pretty tough. I must say that probably the hardest job I've had in aviation, and I've done a fair bit. But that sitting in the right seat, being a navigator, dropping real bombs, watching a student pilot is hard work.
Yes, I can imagine. Was there a lot of, as an instructor, could you see who had it and who didn't, and who had to, push more? Was that why it was quite demanding?
Look, we've all got our strengths and weaknesses, and part of being an instructor is trying to find that. And you see that. I've had a good couple of years teaching students from off the street effectively all the way through to their wings, and you learn to see who will get through or not. All the guys that get to F-111s are pretty good pilots. They're really good pilots, and unfortunately sometimes you just can't get through that final hurdle. In my own case, as a 21-year-old, I found it really hard, and there were a couple of hurdles that I had to really push myself through, or I had to push myself to get over, and I had to really concentrate and focus to pass the course. It was hard. It was hard work, and it demanded a level of maturity that I probably really wasn't at the time until it happened. Yeah. And then it made me into a more mature pilot. Sometimes you see that, and you do have to make a decision occasionally that someone can't continue, and that's pretty hard, especially when they're great people. Nearly all the time.
And to wrap up the F-111 part from myself before we get in some questions from our patrons, did you enjoy your time on the F-111, and how many hours did you get on the jet?
Yeah, I had a fantastic time on the aircraft, and probably now, 2020 hindsight, I wish I'd probably stayed a bit longer. I certainly could have got a couple more years out before being farmed off to ground jobs, which I wasn't interested in doing. And I had a bit over 1,100 hours total in my time there. I had a bit of time off in the middle, and say instructing on the PC9 back in the day. Look, it's a fantastic job. Couldn't have asked more, and I was really lucky to see what I, experience what I did, especially at such an early age. And my initial squadron leadership was let's get the job done, and the amount of responsibility they put on us as young people was, it was pretty high and pretty impressive. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but
absolutely, yeah.
There was a few, I was the youngest out of my group. It's pilots, and but there were a few of us who were pretty young.
Mm-hmm. I think I read in your bio, were you maybe the third youngest F-111 pilot in the world or something like that? I
think at the time, yes. I think there were a couple of guys came maybe a bit younger. There was a teenager just a few years before me.
Wow, that is absolutely crazy. So this is from Joe Kunzler. Did you ever do any recon missions?
No, I wasn't recce trained, though I flew the reconnaissance aircraft, fairly often. Early on, interestingly, they didn't have a second set of throttles, and there was no rudder pedals, so they had a stick that the nav could actually recover. And get the aircraft perhaps to a safe ejection state. But no, I wasn't trained on doing their specific role in reconnaissance. It was pretty. It was a specialist operation. Later on, they put the controls back in them, and we actually flew those aircraft on conversion course when they did the avionics update.
Mm-hmm.
The controls went back in, so we were able to fly them as well. So it was basically back to just PAVTAC, and recce was in the weapons bay, but all the systems and all the switches and everything were all the same again.
Brilliant. And another one from Joe. Do you think there was any room to upgrade the F-111 to carry JDAM and AMRAAM, or was her time truly at a close?
I think that's probably a little bit beyond my... I mean, I'm sure it probably could have been able to carry JDAM. AMRAAM didn't really have a real air-to-air radar. That might have made things difficult for that. We had an attack radar optimised for ground attack, and we used it in air-to-air modes for self-defence, but it wasn't set up to fire radar-guided missiles.
And another question, this person wants to stay anonymous. Why was it called the Pig?
Oh, because it's always down low and in the dirt, and it's got a long nose.
Perfect answer. And another one, how did you feel about the ejection capsule?
Well, you never really wanted to use it. We had a couple of successful ejections in Australia, but you knew that it was going to hurt, especially on the way down, because you end up sitting down like I am now, and they say it's like jumping off a 2 or 3 story building on your back. And I did that once at school on a gym mat, sitting down, and it really hurt.
Not something you want.
It's not what you want, but the capability was you could use it all throughout the envelope. So if something happened at Mach 2, you could get out. And
wow.
Normal ejection seats, I think, struggle with that. Really high speed, and keeping you strapped in and safe until you're slow enough for to successfully get out of the seat. Some of my bosses, they had the ejection in New Zealand. In fact, both of them were in New Zealand. One at Ohakea and one in the harbour. And so one was tested on the ground and one in the water. We used the one that was recovered out of Auckland Harbour, was our procedures trainer. And it's still around somewhere, and people are able to get a look at the F-111 cockpit. That was as it was when it finished. It's still in existence, I think, at one of the museums. But we use that for FX all the time.
Yeah. And another one, did you ever have any RAAF Tornado exchange pilots or navigators on your squadron?
We certainly did. In fact, my first navigator crash buddy was an ex-Tornado nav who came over and joined the RAAF. So, Adrian, if you're around, that was effectively my first. I flew with one of the instructor navs, but Adrian and I were crewed up on course, and he'd flown the Tornado before. And then we had the Tornado exchange. Pilot and nav were generally at one squadron. I think actually the nav one sometimes was at 6 squadron on the reconnaissance.
Interesting. And a good one to wrap up the questions from our patrons here is, what advice would you give to an aspiring pilot?
The best bit of advice I can give to anyone in flying is never give up. So when it comes to going through applications, you will probably get knocked back. Don't take a no the first time as a no forever. They want people to go back. The same applies when you're actually, doing the training. You are going to fail at some point. Pretty much everybody has a hiccup or two, and you just have to put it behind you and move on and get the job done again. So many people. I took 2 goes to get in the Air Force. Nearly everyone on my pilot's course was the same. Sometimes 3. But I applied to the Defence Academy, didn't get through that. applied as soon as I got my Year 12 results. Applied for direct entry pilot. Got through that. Best thing that ever happened to me in the end. But because as I did a little bit of university, I'm glad I just went straight onto the flying side of things. And that's pretty normal, you know, no matter what job in aviation. Don't take a knockback the first time as the end.
Brilliant advice there, Mike. And to wrap up, I've got some personal ones from me. So, do you have any hobbies?
A couple. Pretty busy at the moment, but sort of quite enjoy my cars, and had some pretty reasonably high performance cars in my time. Occasionally like getting out on the track. That's why my helmet up behind me is my actual car helmet with my squadron visor on it.
That's brilliant.
They wouldn't let me take my helmet.
Oh,
could have stolen
it. Don't steal, kids. Favorite aircraft you've flown?
Oh, the F-111 without a doubt. You know, what could I compete with? You know, certainly where I was reasonably good at it. You know, got to do everything in it. You know, loved being in the Hornet a few times in it. It was a fantastic jet as well, and would have loved to have flown the Hornet as well. But, you know, the F-111 really can't go past. And as it turns out, it's a bit of a classic, and there's not as many of us really, is there?
Absolutely. So, one you would like to fly, either past or present?
Oh, look, you couldn't go past an F-22, could you?
Ah, okay, right. I thought you might have gone Spitfire or something like that.
I sort of like my jets.
Me too.
I've been flying jets since I was 19, so as much as
19.
Spitfires before, I like jets, and afterburner's great as well.
Of course, yeah. Who doesn't love an afterburner?
You can always use a bit less, but you can never have too much.
Exactly.
I've had a pretty good career. You know, I mean, I got out of the Air Force, and I was off overseas for quite a long time, and I flew with a lot of really great people. In fact, a lot of people from other air forces, a lot of RAAF Canadians. There was often times I might have been like one of 4 on a crew with all fast jet.
Wow.
So there's pretty good stories out there. Red Arrows, you name it.
Oh, I can imagine.
Auckland's guys. I've had a pretty good and really, blessed career.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for sharing a bit of your story. So cheers, mate.
Thanks, Mike.